For those of you who were at the session last time, I know this was, the last weekend, I know this was a session that was really popular. So I'm excited this time to have Dave Walker. He runs All Brass and Woodwind in Leeds. He's also an instrument maker and a fabulous repairer. So he's got loads of stuff to tell us about. So give him a big hand.
Hello. Thanks to Nigel for a fantastic weekend. I hope you're all enjoying yourself. We are on the trade stands. A lot of interest from a lot of people, which is fantastic. So I'm going to try and split this up into two parts, basically. One of how, when you're actually designing and making an instrument, and then the second part will be about sort of basic repairs and what you might come across in that. At that point, you can actually just ask me any questions you want, and I'll just help, or you can come see me afterwards on the actual stand. So, like I say, my name's Dave Walker. 43 years I've been repairing now. I know I don't look it, but that's how old I am. I think when you start off from school and you're like trying to find your way forward, my background basically was, my father was a mechanic. So you end up helping him at the age of 9 take gearboxes out and things like that. So you end up with a mechanical type of brain. So you set up your shop and you try and advertise what you're sort of doing. And then opportunities come along as you're sort of doing it. And one of the opportunities we got was we managed to buy the factory in Czech Republic, which is the old Armaty factory. Obviously, you don't just buy that, you have to borrow money and all sorts of stuff when you're actually doing it. So again, like the Selma factory, we're talking 1845 history. It's in the triangle where musical instruments were first invented. So they're very, very passionate, the people that you're working with. So my first day at the factory was walking in there, and I get told, right, get on with it. So you open the door to the factory door, and you've got to walk around, and you've got to gain the trust of all these people. So the main problem with Czech is they've been through a lot during the war. What Hitler did, and then the Russians came in and that. So suddenly you've got English owners of this, prestigious factory. And when I say prestigious, you've got Skoda, you've got a motorbike company, and then you've got the Armaty factory. That's how high and regarded this factory is over there. So you walk in the door, first of all, you get his people using, tools that you've never seen before, because I've never made an instrument before. I've got to learn from them, and they've got to learn from me. So you sort of set out watching them and you're thinking, okay, the first job we've got to do is make them all in tune, because every instrument you're making at the moment is out of tune. So let's strip down and actually work out how to do that. So the main thing which will all help you guys with your mouthpieces and stuff like that is actually setting your intonation if your saxophone up or whatever instrument you play. And it's basically done. If you can imagine from the tip of your mouthpiece to the centre of each note is your intonation of your horn. So you want it to be in tune on your middle C. You want it in tune on your low C, but you need to try your middle C in your low C position. So you're basically playing C, 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 C. So what you're doing there is setting the length of your saxophone by the actual tip of your mouthpiece. And then what you do then is you play your embouchure to that intonation setup. Do you all follow that? Yeah? So that's initially, when you sort of start tuning a saxophone and making sure everything's sort of working with it all. And then what we actually do, so when we start making a saxophone, or any instrument, it just starts off a reel of brass, like that. And then what you do, I'll just hand some of the brass out while we're talking to people. If we just start there, and we can sort of hand it out. 3 different types. So you've got solid nickel, which is quite a bright sounding material. You've got the yellow brass, which is 50-50 mix copper zinc, and then you've got 60-40, which is more copper. So if you want to buy a saxophone in a shop, whatever make you decide to go for, and I brought this one to show you, you can see the 2 different colours. So that's got more copper in it. Copper's a softer material, so it will actually give you a softer sound. Yeah? So if you're buying a bronze saxophone or you're buying just think about how that material actually works if you were to work with it, and that's the sound it's going to generate from you. So this particular sax is a nice saxophone. Yellow brass tends to give you a bit more attitude when you're actually playing, more attack when you're actually playing. The red is more ballady, if you know what I mean. So it depends on your sort of style on how you actually play it. But you can see with the different... So that's the actual thickness of your brass that you're actually working with. And then what we do, the next stage, that's a saxophone bell. And it's just cut out of a shape like that. Obviously, it's designed and that. Then we just bend it over a rod, bend it over a rod, bend it over a rod, and then this part sort of goes together like that. And then we have a tool that sort of nibbles. So the nibble goes like that. And then we end up brazing down the inner line. So every single saxophone here, if you look at your saxophone, you will see a line that goes down there. Yeah? And that's how the bells are formed. So from that, good guinea pigs out of the front there. So from that, we then take that, we hammer it on a big thing. I've actually got some photos. Let's just bear with. Yeah? So you can see that shape there with the flat bar, and then we've got a round bar with a big wooden hammer. Simple as that. And we're actually making it into a rounder shape. It's not going to be the perfect shape, but it's actually into a rounder shape. What we have then is, if you look here, this is what you call a hydraulic machine here. So what we do is we put the bell in, and we bung each end up, and then we hydraulically force the oil into it, and it forms it. But if we did that in one go, it would crack the actual brass. So to actually gain it, we have to do it 4 times. And that's where annealing comes in, where we put it in the gas, in the oven, heat it up, you put it back in the press, compress it through. We do that 4 times until it actually gets to that shape. Okay? And then what we do is we have to turn the end over and put a piece of wire in the end. So some cheap saxophones don't actually put the wire in the end, but it does help with the actual ring. And if you drop it, you can actually repair it back. So I always recommend that you buy a saxophone with a ring in there. Then that's then shaped and sanded and filed, and you get with the actual shape of that. Your bottom bow, as you say, it's like a kitfall when you actually get it. So your bottom bow is done in 2 halves, so it's just a flat piece of metal, goes in a press, the press goes down, and it does the shape. You do 2, and then you brace them together. Yeah? So you just end up with a standard bottom bow like that. So in the old days, and this is how old the factory is, that's before hydraulics. So you used to fill it full of lead. You nod, I receipt. Which job would you like in that? Huh? I know which one I want to do. So going in the history, and there's some shape of the bells. Now it's angled, but you can see the sort of shape of the bells. If you like for tuba bells and stuff like that. And then they're made exactly the same as the saxophone bells, shaped round. And then if we go to, so when I start designing, I'm not the best drawer, but so for your palm keys, you can recognise your palm keys now here. What I'm actually looking for is you've got 3 main parts of the key. You've got where it goes on the pad, you've got the pivot point, and you've got your touch piece here, okay? So in between there can be any shape it wants. It could be, up here if you wanted to do. I decided to go for this sort of shape because every other saxophone on the market is just a straight bar, and I just find it boring. You've just got to put a bit of style into what you're doing. I watch a lot of car design programs, and you get innovation from that. So you understand, so you've got your touch plate, your pivot point, and your pad cover. Okay? So you start off with a sketch, like that. I then go to All Brass and Woodwind. You see my Dremel, and I cut them by hand out of, 3mm brass. What then I do is I brace the bits on that we need, and I fit them to my prototype that I'm actually working on. When I'm happy with the actual shape of it, what we do then is it goes CAD drawn. So you can see the same keys now developing through. So we can now reproduce that on a CAD machine, on a CNC machine, where it just cuts it out. And it cuts it out of your 3mm. All your saxophone keys are 3mm, sort of, the arms are all 3mm. And then we just cut the shapes to that. So you can sort of see, I'm doing this very quickly. You can sort of see how it's sort of developing. And then we have things like jigs, like this. a blurred picture as well. So you have your cup and your arm and your rod that goes through. And this is how we actually reproduce. So in a standard saxophone key, there's 5 parts. Yeah, you got your cup, your arm, your bar, your spring hook, and your end piece. So we have to, when we're producing these, you have to get it on a production line. So you have to get it to a point where you can reproduce everything so that they can actually go on. And then when we're actually fitting it to the saxophone, each one's separately adjusted to the actual, every single saxophone. So when we're actually drawing the tone holes, which is this one. So this is quite an important part of manufacturing. So it starts off with, that's your saxophone, that's your tenor saxophone body. And then what you've got here is the same tube. It goes onto this machine here. You can see that same part there. In each part here is actually holes. And then in each hole is like a ball bearing with a screw on it. This machine clamps down, screws into the ball bearing, and pulls it through. So if you ever hear anyone saying drawn tone holes, that's what we mean by drawn tone holes. In the old days, you used to do soldered tone holes. Soldered tone holes like Martins have problems where they start leaking around the actual joint itself. So that's the machine that we actually use to pull the tone holes. So your tonal heights add colour to your sound. So when I'm designing this, body, as you can see here, I can put these holes wherever I want them to be. So higher up, smaller, lower down, bigger. So you make it so it's ergonomically suited to how your fingers fit the saxophone. So as you're looking at the actual tone heights here, if you can imagine sort of a classical saxophone, like a Yamaha, that type of bass, perfectly in tune, fantastic for you guys to actually, play on, because it helps you sort your tuning out with it all. If you're getting a bit more advanced, where you want the horn to actually help you actually express you as a person, which I'll go into a bit of detail on how you do that, you basically need to alter the colour of the tone. So a classical scale is da 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 da. A jazz scale is do wee ba wee. Yeah. So you've got your different colours. So if you look at a tuner and straight up is banging tune, if you go 5 degrees either side, 5%, yeah, either side, it's still in tune, but a flat note is dark. A sharp note is bright. So you end up with a colourful scale. You play it with your ear, and you end up with a perfectly sounding in-tune saxophone. Yeah? So if you're buying like a Mark 6, the note will be flat in the top, when you go into Palm Keys area. Yanagzawa, Selmers, everything like that, a banging tune, absolutely perfect. Now, the way I sort of look at that, on the modern saxophones that are actually produced now, if you can imagine, they're all CAD drawn, the computer done for the tuning on your actual positions, probably done by a guy who's never played an instrument before, but he's supervised on how to actually do this. So they end up with a, wow, fantastic, perfectly in tune saxophone. But it's a bit, to me, like AI, where if you asked AI to play you a ballad, yeah, it could play it, but there's no soul in that actual playing, and there never will be, however they want to do it. So the way I design saxophones is I put me into it. So if it's, I call it the Yorkshire way. If it's flat is it's too long, so you cut a bit off. Sharp, you do vice versa, yeah? So you end up in tune with your own ear, making a perfect saxophone. So the height of these is very important, and the reason it's important, because this is where your colour comes from. So in the old days, you might hear, I've had my saxophone re-lacquered, and, it doesn't sound the same, because in the old days, we used to buff the lacquer off, because we didn't have all the chemicals that we have now. So if we actually buff the lacquer off, you might catch the tone hole with a buff machine. Now, you take your tone hole down by 2 millimetres. Guess what? When we come to put the pads in, we have to level it. We have to lower the hole, yeah? So if we do that on 4 or 5 of your tone holes, you've got a different sounding saxophone. That's why the old days used to say, don't re-lacquer a saxophone. Modern techniques now, which is just chemical, we chemically strip it, yeah? I'm going to pass this around that way for people. And people can start sort of looking. I'll leave and pass. that, which is soprano. And that's a soprano. So you can recognise them, even at this really early stage. Put a mouthpiece on that, it would actually play. Some people do these so you can actually practice your blowing technique. Your overtones is a good technique on that. Let's go to some more. So the first part of my let's go to this part, because this is quite interesting for you. So this jig here is how we put the actual, all your bits to hold your keys on with. You push them in there, you swing that over, and it lines them all up. This is so we can repeat how pillars are actually fastened to the actual body. I always prefer single post, because my theory there is it lets your body vibrate more. On some of them, you have it where, they have strips down. Now, if you have a strip down, to me, it's restricting how it's playing. So early cons were always made with single post. So these are things that when you're actually looking to buy a saxophone, I'm hoping that you've sort of understand how they're actually manufactured a little bit more. So when you go in a shop, you're looking at it now and thinking, well, I know what the different colours are now. I know how the keys are made. Does it fit in my fingers? Is it in tune? Has it got a classical scale, or has it got a jazz scale, depending on the direction you want to go? Yeah, with it all. So go back to this saxophone here. The hardest part was, in my theory, was making the one-piece belt. If you look at all your saxophones, you've got a joint, a big ring around there. Now, to me, that just kills the sound a little bit. So we had to make this in one piece, which is joined by a bracing, but it took so much to actually get that perfected. There's 48 different things on my saxophones than anybody else has. I think one of them, through working with people like Joel and that, is this bridge here, which is actually turned out to be a sound bridge. Sometimes you design things and you don't actually realise how good it is until you actually play it. But on all your saxophones, you've got like a flat bar. And when you're actually doing a function gig, you pick your saxophone up to hook it on, and your button goes down it. And then you're spending, and they've started, and you can't even get your thing on. So that's why I designed that to start with. But it actually links, when you're playing your saxophone and you're playing your F and E, D, you're in a position where you've got a dead D. This actually helps support your D situation on there, on that sort of system. The neck, I sort of came up with it to sort of come up with, if it's on TV, that you might actually recognise my saxophone over everybody else's. But the actual way I did it is it's just what I call floating. So this part here doesn't have any lead underneath it. So again, if you all look at your saxophone, underneath here, you've got all that lead. You've got lead there, you've got lead there, and you've got a badge on the front, which is all lead. Everything there is going to stop the vibration of your neck. So the idea is, as you're playing it, it's getting the resonance through into the actual body, which helps it actually, you want to feel it vibrating in your fingers. As the neck goes into this nickel part here, what happens with that is I actually hand grind them in, because I'm wanting that inner part to touch your outer part, because it's going to send the resonance through your horn better. So if you have a saxophone with a wobbly neck, you need to take it to your local repairer and you need to get it tightened up. Because if it's only touching, when you nip it up, you're only getting 10% of the actual sound being resonated into your saxophone. So that's another point, on your repairer. I think as far as repairers go, you just need to get very friendly with your local repairer. I know some of you guys, you were saying you're like 50 miles away from a repairer, and it's a bit difficult. What we try and do, Allbrass and Woodwind, is we offer a service where we do video repairing. So if you're stuck and you just need a quick job doing, I can talk you through it. It actually works. I'm going to drop a few names. I'll just pick them up afterwards. But Nevaeh Garcia, I don't know if anyone's heard of her, but she's quite big in the British jazz scene at the moment. Had a phone call from her. I'm just going on to stage, and it was Royal Albert Hall, and she'd caught a spring with the dress, because she had this big fluffy dress on, like that, and she's like, I just need to do it. So, right, okay, just hook it back on again with your finger, push it and locate it. Yeah, that's it. I had the guy called Shabak Ochins, and he actually hear the band in the background. And he said to them, just go around a few times, runs off stage, and he's like, Dave, this ain't working. And I go, okay, don't panic, just do this, and it's just done. So every single thing on your horn is usually because something's bent or something's unhooked. It's usually gone. What we can't mend over the phone is deterioration of pads and corks, which is down to you guys to actually keep your saxophone maintained. Yeah, which is, I'm just going to start doing live repair courses on the web where you'll be able to log in and you'll be able to watch me actually do basic repairs, like replacing corks or things like that. You know, maybe able to hook it up with Nigel and sort of do something like that on a live stream. What I've done out there for you guys, and only of you guys, is we've done an emergency repair kit. So in this repair kit, when you open it up, we've got a knife, we've got a screwdriver, we have a cork with sticky, double-sided sticky tape. Normally I would use contact glue like Evo Stick, but if you're on that emergency type of position, you don't want to be putting glue on and, getting through customs if you are playing abroad. It's designed for the guys who sort of go on cruise ships, if you can imagine that, where they've no way of doing it, Some people use, the girls I've had people use eyelash glue. Anything that they've actually got, you can actually use because I can then do it properly when you actually come in the shop. So you've got your different grades of sandpaper, you've got your Rizla papers. It's not for smoking, obviously. What we do with the Rizla papers is on a pad, I might say to you over the actual phone, get your Rizla papers out, is we can actually tell by pulling it if it, oops, that was a magic trick, wasn't it? You can actually, shall I show it so everyone can see it? Sorry. You can actually see it's gripping on there. So what it would do is lift it up and you move the corner of it round. And I imagine it's a clock, 1 to 12. So you move it round in each part. So if you're pulling it here and it's light here, then the key's been lifted. Because when it was made, it'll have been level and seating. So the only reason it's not seating is because it's been bent. Yeah? So this works with all your pads. You can go around all the pads and that. So then if it's off at one side, because you've caught it, what I might say to you is we need to just bend it back. Because the only way you can repair properly is to revert back to before the damage has been done. So some repairers would, what you call, float the pad. So they'd heat it up. They'd actually move the pad. But you'd end up with a pad like that, which it's not right. It's not the right way to do it. So we need to bend the key back to where it was. So when I make a saxophone, it goes on. We have to bend it to get it to actually fit. So I would say to you, use an old reed, because then the reed, when you actually compress it, will actually sort of indent. It won't damage the brass or your actual thing. If you use something like metal, then as you push it, it will actually dent your tone holes. So if you use an old reed, the backside of a reed, the thick part, you can actually put it in that part there, and then we can just push the opposite side, and that's going to just level that out. So if you've just caught it, say, you've caught it on your dress or anything like that, or dog's jumped on it or something like that, all these can be repaired over the phone, yeah? Or if you ring your local repairer, he should be able to talk it through. So that brings me to the modern day type of repairing, which is Instagram, which is your WhatsApp and everything like that. And people want connection with what's actually happening near nowadays. So what we've just started to do, if you bring a saxophone to us for a service, in a service what we do is you take all the keys off. We would then put the instrument itself in a disinfectant bath. At that point I would take a photograph of your saxophone in the bath. We even have a little rubber duck that floats around your saxophone. It's like a pamper weekend, if you know what I mean, for your saxophone. But it's disinfecting it all. It's getting all that stuff, beer, food, everything that you've actually blown into your saxophone, which however you look at it, that's what happens. I've had some awful stories, but we had a famous saxophone player came in and she's like, oh, it's just not working right. And when I prodded something in it, a penknife dropped out. And she said, I lost that 3 months ago. And it was green, mouldy, slimy and everything like that. We've had sweets. In tubas, we have like a tune called Tuba Smarties. And when they start playing it, everyone throws sweets there. So you get walnut whips in it, you get all sorts of stuff. Then the tubas are laid on the side, and it's always tuba players, I don't know why, but they lay them on the side. You get mice going inside it and getting stuck. The worst one we had was a kitten had gone inside it and got stuck because it can't actually back down the actual tapered tube. So you find all sorts in 40 odd years of doing it. I've just about seen everything. So that shows you the how we're doing for time. Oh, we've only got 5 minutes left. It's what? Get the cat out, yeah. Yeah. It wasn't healthy. I think it's the actual smell of it that, how can somebody not know it was in there? Here, kitty, kitty. No, I don't know where it's gone. The tuba smells a bit, and it doesn't play. So, yeah, it's not good. So, if you come to the trade stand, and if you just give us share it on WhatsApp or Facebook or Instagram, however you actually want to use it, in return you get a free £20 emergency repair kit. You just keep it in your case, and then you've got your essentials in there, and then I can talk it through. So in there's some cork. Now, it's very common on your key work, because on each key is a piece of cork. So I've cut them to the actual size they need to be. You lift the key up, you push it under, squeeze it down, it'll glue, cut it off to the right size, but then you've got a thick cork. So what happens with a thick cork is that will be too low. So the height of these keys is very important to an actual thing. So in there's some sandpaper. Again, we can all do this over the phone, as we do it. I don't mind showing people this afternoon how I do it. But I'd use a sandpaper, obviously the rough side up to the cork, before anybody scratches the saxophone. And you just take bits off. Now, you're better off taking it off 10 times rather than trying to do it in one go. And what we're trying to do is lift it up until there's no double action. So if there's double action there, you've gone too far. Yeah? But the actual height, because someone else has preset it, all you're doing is putting it back to as it was before. When I fully overhaul an instrument, I can set the heights for the actual horn. And what we try to do there is get the air flowing, because it goes down the horn, it comes back out. If you put tissue paper here and you play saxophone, nothing comes out. Okay? So it's all about how it works and comes back. Just lastly, while we're talking about it, because people have been asking about mouthpieces. So when you go buy a mouthpiece, you've seen on YouTube and you've seen, oh, that guy sounds great on that mouthpiece, and this guy sounds great, and that's what I'm wanting to be like. So you go into your shop or you order it online. It comes through, sounds nothing like what you actually expected to sound like, or it's really hard to play. Now, the reason being for that is only a tool to actually help you get to where you want to get to. That doesn't give you the sound that you're wanting to do. The sound comes from you. So your inner cavities, your throat, all in here. This is why when I speak, you know it's me, because my accent, and that's all come from, apart from where I live, but the sound of my voice is coming from me, and that's why every single person in this room sounds different. And that's where your unique sound will come from when you're actually playing a saxophone. At the moment, you probably all sound the same. As you sort of develop on, you'll get your own sound with it all. All these do is help you get there, okay? So in your mouthpiece, you've got what we call a baffle, you've got a table, a tip opening. So the tip opening is the distance between, so on the Selmer ones, you've got like a C, C star, C2 star, D, E, F, G. So the bigger the letter, the bigger the gap opening here. So what you get, the bigger the gap, the more variety of sound you get. So jazz. Close to the gap, the more straight you get. So if you're playing classical, you need a small tip like a C star with a harder reed on. To get the same sound for the jazz one, you go wider tip, but you have to go softer reed. So you might even have to go back to 1.5 again for it to actually work on that thing. But that'll give you that ooh difference in sound. Whereas the classical is da. You know, if I play the saxophone to a classical player, they run out of the building because they think it's awful because of the variety of tone that I get with it all, you know? So is that... Yeah? It's about time, isn't it? I could go on for days, not only hours. You can, yes. Quick question.
Good question. I've been told that when you pick up the saxophone,
pick it up by the bell because those joints there will weaken over time and everything will shift down.
Okay, yeah.
So the second question is, if that's true, you can tell me if
Yeah.
where is the best place
Okay.
on the saxophone to pick it up to
Yeah.
minimise damage?
Yeah. The worst place you can pick it, and I watch pro players pick them up like this sometimes, and I sit in the audience and I'm cringing with it all. The way I do it is I use that part of the finger and I would put it under that part. So it goes where your screw is on the front. I would pick it up by that, yeah. I would then swap hands like that. I would hook my sling on and it would bounce down. And then when I put it back on its stand, I would put it like that because what I don't want you to do is squeeze any keywork because you'll bend it, you know, with it all. But, I mean, I can sort of see where you're coming from and why people would say that. But it goes on your stand and, it, you know, once it's on and it's safe, it should be fine. But that's how I pick a saxophone up on that front, like that. And I put it down different. Yes.
Some people got sort of unlacquered and gunmetal.
Yes.
What difference does the...
So the difference between raw brass and lacquered, when you actually get that, if you can imagine a church bell, and you've got a beautiful, machine bell, 100 years old, say, and you go bong with it, sounds fantastic. If you put lacquer on it, which is twin pack polyurethane, and you spray it around that, and you hit it, it has to go bong. It just has to have a different, because it's not letting it vibrate. The only problem with them is they go darker over the time you play them. So you get to the point where your horn might be too dark. I mean, Joel's, that is pretty dark, is that now? But that's the type of playing he likes, and that's the direction he wants to go with it all. If you're doing classical, you would never have a raw brass saxophone. You'd always stick with a lacquered saxophone because it helps you in that. Yeah, silver tends to brighten it up a little bit.
What about silver?
Yeah, silver brightens the horn up a little bit. So if you want it, gold plate is on top of the silver. So with that we'd have the brass, silver, and then gold it if you wanted that. So silver, if you look at it, brighter. Yeah, are we done?
Awesome. How about this, eh?
Thank you. Thank you.